Hello and welcome to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Massive thanks to Ubisoft for giving me early access to the game. I've been playing it for about 17 hours now, and I wanted to share some hints and tips that I wish I'd known sooner when I started the game. The first one is that you might have noticed I'm playing as Yasuke in the open world. This is not something you can do at the beginning of the game. You'll be playing as Naoe for a while, and if you want to play as Yasuke, just carry on through the main story a little bit. You do get access to the open world as Naoe, and there's so much you can do. I got distracted for ages. But it's probably a good idea to play through the first few story missions just to kind of unlock a few things, like being able to play as Yasuke, so then you can fully enjoy the open world and make sure you can do everything as you come to every new location. Speaking of what the characters can and can't do, there's not actually as many limits as you might think. Yasuke does kinda suck at climbing, that is true, and Naoe's much better at that, and Yasuke's a bit better at fighting, although to be honest, Naoe can definitely hold her own, because both characters have to use the sort of parrying or deflecting and dodging mechanics that means either of them can take on an entire camp once you've got a few upgrades. But there are a few side missions, a few little quest chains and a few quest givers who literally won't interact with you at all unless you're playing as the right character. Whenever that happens, it will come up with a message saying you need to be Naoe to talk to this person or you need to be Yasuke. When you need to switch, it's much easier than I thought it was. In my gameplay and impressions video, I said you had to go to a fast travel point because that's what I thought the game had told me. Turns out there's a much easier way. So if you are going to a fast travel point, you can always choose to either fast travel or fast travel as the other character if you want to be the other character when you get there. But if you go to the inventory tab, you can see at the bottom in the middle, there's actually a button that just lets you change to that character. So just hold that button, there'll be a brief loading screen, and then you will be in the character you need at the exact point where you left off. You don't need to go back to a checkpoint or a fast travel point or anything like that. This can be particularly useful when a quest or a side quest or a place that you find out in the wilds suddenly requires you to climb something. Yasuke's bad at climbing, so just switch to Naoe, then you can use her grappling hook and get around easily. A very quick tip, if you see any animals out and about on your adventures, see if you can pet them. Sometimes, if you can pet them, it will actually let you keep them as a pet. So then when you go back to your hideout, you can put them in your hideout as a pet. Everybody wants all the cute stuff. I found a few cats and a few dogs that let you do this. There's also a few more interesting animals that you can do this with. So just make sure you pet absolutely everything you find. And why wouldn't you do that? The next tip is more just a bit of reassurance. You might have seen videos where people are doing loads of fighting as both Naoe and Yasuke, and they're absolutely demolishing the enemies. This does happen in the game, but it's not how it starts out. When you start out, you will have very poor gear, you won't have many skills, and you will kind of suck at combat. You will get hit very easily. There'll be certain types of attacks that you can't do that much about other than dodging out the way all the time. All of that gets much easier. Once you've just got a few skill points and mastery points, you'll be able to unlock abilities that let you kind of deflect attacks much more effectively, do extra things when you dodge out of the way, and you'll become incredibly lethal. But at the very beginning, you will have a hard time fighting. So stealth is useful, and when you're stealthing around, you can do things like hiding in the grass. You can see there's a little meter at the top which has an eye and a bar next to it. The size of the bar is how visible you are. If you are completely invisible to enemies, it will have a cross through the eye. That means you can't be seen. This is normally because you're either you've gone prone in some tall grass or something like that, or you're in an area of complete darkness and you're crouched. If you need to make an area of darkness, you can knock out all of the little sources of light about just by throwing a kunai at them or hitting them with a sword. You can't knock out the sun, admittedly, but most of the other things you can get rid of just to make it a little bit easier to sneak around if you want to. Much was made of the seasons changing in the game. You will notice the seasons change sometimes when you fast travel or sometimes when you just switch characters. There's lots of little in-game activities that will progress the seasons a little bit. As far as I can tell in my first 17 hours of playing, it doesn't really change anything at all. I've not even seen a situation where I wanted to go swimming and ice had frozen the lake or something like that. I'm sure maybe there'll be opportunities where that happens, but from what I can tell, it's really not something to worry about. So I started stressing out a little bit at the beginning that the seasons were kind of moving on very, very quickly. As far as I can tell, it literally doesn't matter. But it does have a few benefits, like it will refresh your scouts, and any objects that your scouts have collected for you will get sent back to your hideout. Speaking of hideouts, there's these really, really helpful little buildings dotted around the map, like synchronization points, and they're called something like kakuregas. And basically these are little assassins' hideouts, and as you walk past them in the world, they'll unlock on your map as little grey icons, and then you'll be able to pay 800 coins to unlock them. Once you've done that, they will become a fast travel point you can go to, and it's also a place where you can refill your stocks of things, make sure that you're healed up, and just kind of generally reset whenever you want, which is super, super handy. It does function as a complete fast travel point, and it's really handy, like if you need to go back to a location you've been to. Sometimes you'll see, oh, you actually went past the Kakurega at some point, so you can just unlock it and go there. To be honest, it's where I spend nearly all of my money in the game. Speaking of the synchronization points, they work a little bit differently too. You still climb up to the top of them and get this cool cutscene that shows you the world, but now the sort of slight change is that you can look around using the focus mode by holding left trigger, or it's called observe at this point for some reason, and then if there's any white dots around, you can actually kind of focus on them for a bit, and it will turn them into an icon which will be added to your map, and it will say, you know, whether it's a synchronization point or a temple, or if it's a question mark, you know, you don't know what it'll be. Maybe it's a fight, maybe it's a building, who knows what it is. Speaking of those little dots, the dots are really important. Whenever you've cleared out an area, say you've killed a load of enemies, if you go back into that focus mode by holding left trigger, not the eagle sight mode thing that now it has, but just the focus mode, you can look around and see different dots. If there's any that have a white dot, that's just something that you can pick up, like rations or something like that, that could be useful to you. If there's a gold dot, that means there's some kind of treasure there that you want to pick up. So it's really good to get into the habit of just clearing out a place and then looking around a focus mode just to make sure you haven't missed any rooms that have a bunch of treasure in them or have a bunch of items in them or something like that. You can also use the focus mode to track enemies. That's something that the game does teach you how to do, where if you just look at an enemy with it, it will put a little arrow over their head. If you're in the eagle vision mode, where you can see through walls a little bit, you can still use focus mode to tag enemies just to keep track of where they are. Another thing that the game doesn't really explain very well is how to get to different places. When you're looking at the map, you might be tempted to do what you probably did in other Assassin's Creed games and just go in a straight line to wherever you need to go. Instead, you're better off following paths and things. You can see on the map there's some areas that are covered in forest and there's some areas that have like a path going through them, or maybe even just a cleared trail. This is definitely the best way to travel. You can go through the forest, but it's very dense. There's no interesting objects in it or anything like that. There's nothing to find. It's just kind of weird dead area in the game. The game definitely wants you to stick to the path, stick to the clearings, because that's where you'll find, you know, little interactions. Maybe you'll find some treasure, stuff like that. If you're ever unsure of where to go or you need to travel a very long way, if you hold left on a D-pad, it will add the Pathfinder mode, and basically a little line will appear pointing you in the direction of your objective. And you can set a marker on the map in order to set that objective, or you can just choose a mission and it will show you where to go. You can also obviously use your horse by holding down on the D-pad. If your horse hasn't been summoned recently, it will just appear behind you and you'll immediately get on as it runs past, so you can just keep on running. It looks very cool. If you have summoned your horse lately, so it's kind of in the world near you, pressing that button will just try and make the horse get to you. And the horse is very realistic in that it is incredibly dumb and it will get stuck on everything. So normally it's easier to go get to your horse and press Y or triangle to mount up on it. The final thing that I think the game really doesn't explain very well is the animus. And I don't mean like, oh, how you get into the Assassin's Creed world or whatever, genetic memories and all that nonsense. I mean the little animus glitches and missions that you sometimes get access to. There's a whole system in this game that I just don't think the game explains very well at all, where basically there's a special store and there's a couple of special battle passes, and then there's some missions that keep on getting refreshed every now and then. They're like random little missions that I think every 2 days or so you get new ones. You can do those missions in order to get currency that you can then spend on the battle passes. There's like 2 battle passes. You don't have to pay for them. They're free, but they function like battle passes. And if you do those sort of random missions, you'll get currency that will unlock stuff as they go. So I'm guessing this is kind of the live service thing to give you more things to do, more things to unlock after you finish the game. But you can do it from the very beginning, and one really nice thing about it is any objects you get in it will be the level that you're at. You can always go back to your hideout and actually upgrade any gear to the level you're at. It doesn't even cost very many materials at all. But you can get stuff from the battle pass that will be like good gear. So it's worth just double checking if you need a certain piece of gear, you know, you haven't found a decent chest plate for a while or something like that. You can check that to see if you can get something just by doing a couple of those missions. There's also a store there where you use some other kind of currency. I've got some of that and I didn't pay anything, so I don't really know exactly where it comes from. I think some missions might give you that as well. So you can get some of that currency and then spend stuff on a store, and the stuff in the store is like fancy looking gear with a couple of fancy effects. Again, it will always be at your level, and that store refreshes every few days. The Animus missions themselves, you'll see when you're actually near them that they'll have a weird glitchy appearance. If you happen to stumble across any of these in the wild, you just stumble across a camp where there's some weird glitches in the air and stuff like that going on, that's because it's an Animus mission. So if you kill someone in there or loot everything, which you'll probably do anyway, to be honest, because the combat's fun and you always want to loot everything, then you'll probably get some of those shard points too. So that's just a few tips, a few things that I wish I'd known when I first started out with Assassin's Creed Shadows. If you have any questions about the game, leave them in the comments below. Check out my video on my gameplay and impressions, and I've also got a long half-an-hour video of unbroken gameplay if you want to see what it's like before it comes out. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye!